YouTube. So today I'd like to talk to you about the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is one of the biggest parts of the program as you get deeper into your study of mathematics, sometimes around year 9, year 10, or whichever program you're following. It can happen at a different moment in time. Typically your teenage years are going to be full of quadratic formulas, just to make sure that you know how to solve a bunch of different problems which have second degree equations in them that don't always work out or that don't factorize nicely, because real life problems don't always work out perfectly. The early questions that we give you usually work out because we make them work out for you, but once you start looking at real life data, a lot of the time it doesn't work out perfectly. So you need to have formulas to fall back on to make sure that you can do these questions, and this is one of those cases. If you can't factorize an equation, a second degree equation, you're going to need the quadratic formula. Now, a lot of students stress out about this, and you don't need to stress out about this. There are ways to do it that make it stress-free and a little bit more easy to understand, a little bit easier. So, here is the formula, and I know it looks a little bit clunky. x1, x2, so the solution set x1, x2 is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so let's try and understand this. First of all, this is a formula related to a quadratic, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So the b value is the value in front of x, the a value is the value in front of x squared, and the c value is the value at the end. Okay? So here's what's happening. I would prefer, and I think it's a good idea, if you worked out the b squared minus 4ac value first. And so this value is this value under the square root. Now the reason why it'll be better for you to work this out first is because there's some cases where you'll find the square root of a negative number. Like if this value is negative, you'll have the square root of a negative number. And in mathematics, the square root of a negative number is a math error. So if you find that the b squared minus 4ac value is negative, there are actually no solutions to this equation. And there's no point in you going further. So there's no point in you doing all of this if you figure out that this value is negative, because it's stuck under a square root. And so you don't need to do it if you figure out that it's negative. So let's look at this case first. So if the delta value is negative, you'll find that there are no solutions. Essentially, you're looking at a curve like this, a curve that's kind of flying above the x-axis and which never intersects the x-axis and has no solutions. So in the case where this delta value is negative, there are no solutions, and you just stop the question right here and you say, okay, I don't need to figure out x1 and x2 because I can't, they don't exist. Okay. However, if the delta value is 0, you get like in this case, so b squared minus 4ac is 0, you'll find yourself with the square root of 0. And so minus b, so the square root of 0 is just 0. So you'll have minus b plus or minus 0 over 2a, which is just one solution, minus b over 2a. So in terms of what it looks like, you'll have a curve that does this. It just touches once. It goes down and it touches once at minus b over 2a, and then it goes up again. That's when delta is equal to 0. Because plus or minus the square root of 0, it's just going to be the same thing. And then you have your third case scenario, which is the most usual. You'll find that the delta value is positive, and you'll have two solutions, minus b minus the square root and minus b plus the square root. So this looks a little bit like this. So you're crossing twice, and we call these x1 and x2. Here you just have x1, just one value. You're just crossing once here. Call that x1. There's only one solution. Okay, so let's explore a real example to see if we can try and figure this out and make sense of it with some real numbers. Now, there's a quadratic I gave you in the last part, which was x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0, which factorizes as x plus 2, x plus 3. Now, imagine that you cannot see the factorization of this quadratic and that you're forced to use the quadratic formula. Well, this is how you would do it. Okay, so first you would do delta equals b squared minus 4ac. So imagine delta is like a test. It's a test for solutions. We want to know if we have one solution, if we have two solutions, if we have three solutions. Oh, well, we can't have three. If we have one solution, two solutions, or just 0 solutions. Okay, so these are the three scenarios that we can have. So b squared minus 4ac in this case is going to be 5 squared, so that's your b value, minus 4 times, and then the a value is 1, there's 1x squared, it's not 0. 4 times 1 times 6, so 5 squared, 25, minus 4 times 1 times 6 is 24. So delta is equal to 1. And now you can ask yourself, is 1 a positive value? Is it a negative value? Or is it a 0 value? Well, 1 is a positive value. So you can say delta is positive. Therefore, we have 2 solutions. Okay, we're in this case. This is the 2 intersections case. So we're going to need the square root of this thing in the formula. So let's try and figure that out first. What's the square root of delta? It's the square root of 1, which is 1. Okay, so that's going to be useful. We'll just use 1 for this value. So now we can find the 2 solutions. So here we go. So the 2 solutions, x1, x2, equal to negative b. So b was 5. So negative b is negative 5. And then plus or minus the square root of delta, which is 1, divided by 2a. Now a was 1, so this is 2. So what's minus 5 minus 1 divided by 2? Minus 5 minus 1 is minus 6. Minus 6 divided by 2 is minus 3. And then what's minus 5 plus 1 divided by 2? Minus 5 plus 1 is minus 4. Minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. So these are your 2 solutions, negative 3 and negative 2. And so using the quadratic formula, you can find the 2 solutions to this quadratic, which in this case you could have done by just factorizing it, for sure. Like that was the easiest way to do it. But just to give you an example of how this works, we decided to use the formula. So steps to use the formula: do the delta test first, which is b squared minus 4ac. If it's positive, you have 2 solutions. If it's negative, you have no solutions. If it's equal to 0, you have 1 solution. It's just touching once. Most of your cases are going to be 2 solutions like this, like 90% of the time. Otherwise, we're giving you questions which don't make any sense and that you can't work out, so not much point. Try and figure out if it's facing up or facing down. Again, that's got to do with the value in front of x squared. In this case, these are all facing up. And then apply the formula. So the square root of delta here was 1. And we applied the formula, minus 5 plus or minus 1 divided by 2. And we found these 2 separate solutions. Okay, if this was useful to you, then make sure that you practice, take another quadratic and apply the formula again, and then take another quadratic and do it again until you find that you're finding the correct solutions and that you're not finding the process too difficult. A lot of students say that they can find the formula on the formula sheet, and the issue with that is that you haven't practiced it. So finding it on the formula sheet is not that useful. Okay, if you need the formula sheet to remind yourself of the formula, that means you don't know how to use it. If you used it a bunch of times, you won't need the formula sheet because you'll know exactly how it goes. And this is the kind of level that you want to get to in order to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. Or if questions get a little bit harder, because when questions get harder, you need to have a good understanding of the formula and its pitfalls, right? And the only way that you're going to get it is by doing. So I recommend that you do 10 questions and then, make sure that you're doing them all correctly. And then that's the way that you're going to understand this formula. So if this was useful to you, then please follow us on our YouTube channel. You can give us a subscribe and a follow. You can follow us on Instagram at MathemagicMD and on Facebook, facebook.com/HLMathemagic. Thank you all for watching, and the next part will be completing the square.